Hello. Today we would like to explain what responsive feedback is, tell you about how it can benefit you, and welcome you to the Curve, a consortium dedicated to helping practitioners use feedback to learn and adapt. The Curve Consortium is comprised of MNC Saatchi, Harvard School of Public Health, and MSpace. Our role is to convene the Curve and bring lessons from global best practice to the table. But really, you are now the Curve, and we're excited to have you on board. From executive secretary and directors of primary healthcare development agencies at the national and state levels, to senior program officers at leading donors in Nigeria, from project directors, program managers, to senior technical advisors and specialists in the country's largest health programs, all of you are coming together in a shared effort to get more value from data to improve decision-making and achieve better outcomes. You might be wondering, what is responsive feedback? Well, responsive feedback is based on the simple truth that if we keep learning, we can keep improving. If we regularly analyze feedback data, we can find areas for experimentation and improvement, not when the program has ended, but while the program is still live in the field. We call this responsive feedback. Here are a couple of examples of responsive feedback in action. In Nigeria, a health program sought to improve health delivery by supporting the business operations of local medicine vendors, but feedback from the field showed that supporting the businesses wasn't enough by itself. The program also needed to help medicine vendors give correct advice. This feedback enabled the program designers to change their approach to ensure that the program succeeded. In Ghana, implementers sought to recreate a successful anti-smoking campaign from Botswana. The original campaign in Botswana had relied on radio shows and social media, but feedback, crucially, revealed that children in Ghana rarely listen to radio or use social media, so the campaign was changed to reach children where they are in school, and this critical correction from feedback helped to ensure the program's success. Responsive feedback helps us to refine both our strategies and actions, so what we are doing, but it also helps us to question and refine our deeper underlying assumptions. Why do we do what we do? Responsive feedback allows us to work on and refine both the form of our implementation and the deeper reasoning and theories that sit behind that implementation. Responsive feedback helps us get much more value from data. Often we collect data for accountability, but we don't necessarily use data for active learning and decision-making. Sometimes data is collected, but it sits on the shelf. It's not really used to generate actionable lessons. With responsive feedback, the goal is to use data to provide practical lessons to inform action. Too often, data is a backward-looking measure of how we've performed in the past, and the ethic of responsive feedback is to use data to improve our current and future performance. And finally, often data is gathered to track progress, but data isn't necessarily gathered to answer a clear learning agenda, to answer those probing questions that can help us to improve our implementation and our deeper theory. This is the Curve process for using responsive feedback for proactive learning. First, we convene stakeholders. Next, we uncover our assumptions. How do we think our programs work? What underlying assumptions sit behind that? As we saw on the previous slides, why do we do what we do? Next, reveal learning opportunities. How can we test our assumptions? Where can we learn from feedback? Where can we test? Where can we experiment? Next, we seek evidence to answer those learning opportunities. And finally, we learn from that feedback and we evolve and get better. So all of that sounds pretty nice in principle, but it can be harder to do in practice. Why is it hard to do in the real world? Well, there can be a lack of data expertise among staff. Nobody likes to maybe identify ways that we haven't gotten things right. Time and money are always limited. Bureaucracy and silos stand in the way. Data may not be available. It may not be of very good quality. And finally, there may not be a demand from key stakeholders for this kind of ongoing learning and ongoing adaptation. So the Curve's mission is to make continuous improvement through responsive feedback more readily achievable for everyone. We do this by bringing together practitioners like you to share and develop best practice, by collaborating on practical ways to overcome barriers to doing it, to showing people how to harness natural opportunities for responsive feedback so it can fit into your existing work plans and be institutionalized as a regular practice. And finally, we offer technical assistance and training to help with skill development. Here is some of the global best practice in development. We've created a guide on how to design agile grants. We're developing a guide on how to weigh evidence to arrive at justified, appropriate decisions. And we're creating a guide on how to pull more value from the data sets that you have so that that data can show you how to get better faster. Now, Nigeria will lead the way as a global exemplar of responsive feedback. So what will happen next for the Nigeria community of practice? Well, we'll share with you the results of formative research with many of you and tell you what you told us about responsive feedback, what makes it easy, what makes it harder, and how you would like the Curve support to embed its use. We'll work with you to create a schedule of activities to help you come together to collaborate and learn. We'll help you work with your colleagues to share success stories and best practice, to learn from your colleagues and share your work. You can apply for training activities and technical assistance. For example, Harvard is currently developing a training program, and you can come together with your colleagues to develop shared best practice on high interest questions like how can we get more value from existing data sources, and how can we bring stakeholders on board with responsive feedback. We're so excited to be working with you all.